Welcome once again to the Irish in Sweden podcast, my friends. My name is Philip O'Connor and I'm in my little studio here in Sankt Eriksplan in Stockholm, and the snow is melting away, leaving big dirty pools of water and what the Swedes call slask outside the door. It's absolutely miserable out there. It's January, it's a bit dark, it's late afternoon as I'm putting the last touches to this, what I think is a wonderful podcast this week. And do you know what makes it wonderful, lads? It's not me, it's nothing to do with me. It's all to do with the stories that people are telling me this week as I went around the place. And I think it was Carrie Cook who said to me, yeah, I love listening to the podcast every week, Phil, but as soon as you mention sport I just tune out altogether, right? And there's been a lot of sport lately and that kind of thing, but this week we are dedicated to the performing arts, right? I've had so many conversations this week that there's actually going to be a bonus podcast in the middle of the week because everybody is coming out of hibernation. The Christmas is over and things are starting to happen. So over the course of the last week, I'll tell you exactly what you can expect now, right? Over the course of the last week, I have been speaking to the wonderful people from Spuds Sill, led by director Grace O'Malley, who is getting a cast and crew together to put on a production of a play called Canaries. And then after that, we're going to hear from Ged Graham. And Ged is the man behind the Seven Drunken Nights show, which is coming to Stockholm for 4 dates in early February. You'll remember, I think it was somebody in the Irish group in Gothenburg. God almighty, who was it down there? Was it Adrian Kelly? Maybe might have put it up there. And people were wonder what it is. So we went off, and it took us long enough with the old Christmas break and that kind of thing, but I finally got hold of Ged there on the way to the theatre in Finland, where the tour is kicking off at the moment. So we're in Finland first and then in Denmark, and then they're going to be coming up to us here in Sweden, and there's a few dates there. And then last night, as I'm talking to you now, I sat down with the great Brian O'Connor, and Brian is from Limerick, tremendous singer, guitar player. A troubadour is the word that it's used to describe him in Swedish, and you'll actually hear him mention it during the interview that we did about what he does and how he presents the music that he plays to people here. And it's not just, going into a pub and sort of singing songs. There's a lot more to it than that, really, in terms of the Swedish entertainment tradition. And it's something that I did myself when I moved over here, and Brian and Lockie and many others have been involved in over the years. So that's what you're going to get on the podcast this week. So it's great to have a situation whereby we have such great creativity in the community, both from the Spuds and Sill point of view, from the drama and also from the music, and then the heritage of Irish music in the form of the Dubliners, the Seven Drunken Nights. Obviously you can tell from the name of the show, it's a sort of a history of the Dubliners, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing it, because in the course of trying to find out what I needed to find out for this podcast, I've seen a few bits from YouTube, and that really does look amazing. And then speaking to Ged as well, he took me through the whole production and that kind of thing. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, right, this comes out every week on a Monday morning at 7 o'clock, or as close as possible, depending, because I work a lot with sports and sometimes my weekends could disappear without me even noticing. And it's for you. So if you're in business, if you're in academia, if you're in sport, if you're doing anything whatsoever, if you have any sort of a hobby, I want to know about it. If you've opened a restaurant or a bar in the Arctic Circle, get on to me. It's all about creating community here in Stockholm, in Sweden, in Gävle, in Malmö, in Gothenburg. And it's all about using this then as a platform to bring us all together, right? It's great if you can support the podcast, patreon.com/Our Man in Stockholm. Throw in a $5 a month there, and that will help keep the lights and the microphones on here. And if you want to, you can Swish a few bob, right? Swish is the payment app. It's kind of like what Revolut is used for in Ireland. 123-2424-166. That's 123-2424-166. And that will go in there, and Julia, my wonderful accountant, will pay all the taxes and make sure that everything's sorted out there. So it's all kept above board. You don't want to be on the wrong side of Scattermarket in this country, lads. Holy Jesus, you get yourself in awful trouble altogether if you think the revenue commissioners in Ireland are as bad. Oh my God. So let us get into it, right? So this is, I'm not going to say there are a couple of shorter interviews. Certainly Grace and Ged from Seven Drunken Nights a little bit shorter. We will be returning to Spuds and Sill as we go along, right? Because Grace sent me a message on Instagram and she said there's a part in this play which is called Canaries, and she'll explain a little bit more about it because I think it'd be perfect for you. And we went, hang on a second here, lads. I don't really know if, don't mind being behind the microphone, but up on the stage, my days of doing that kind of thing, I thought were behind me. And then Grace convinced me to go along, and we read a few different parts, and we might go back next Monday, and you never know, you might see me taking part in it, you know. But in one way, I really do want to sort of take part in the play, and I want to sort of follow the whole journey of it, and, you know, make a few little recordings, and maybe we'll bring you a longer episode dedicated, like a little mini documentary dedicated to the whole thing in due course. But listen, all things in good time, right? Let us get the introduction from Grace O'Malley about what the play is, how it's being put on, and how she's going to pull it all together. So here she is now, the director, a wonderful professional actor and director and writer in her own right, taking part in our amateur dramatic society, Spuds Sill, the theatre wing of the Swedish Irish Society, if you will. Here she is, Grace. Grace O'Malley, we have had the first read-throughs for Spuds Sill so far this year. How has this evening been for you?
I was really excited to be here and a little bit nervous because you never know what you're signing yourself up for, but it went really well, and I'm just so happy that so many people came along with an open mind and so many yes-sayers. I asked everyone a question, and no matter what I said, everybody said, yeah, no problem, I'll do it, and that's really what you want.
Tell us about the play that's going to be put on this year. Was it you that chose it? Was it chosen by committee? No, you can't do that in Sweden. You have to choose it by committee. Don't you?
The committee has to choose. It is a Swedish committee after all, but it's called the Canaries, and it's about a group of people that go on holiday and just the most unlikely things happen, and it's a type of holiday that you're not going to forget in a long time. It's great crack. Lots of fun little roles and characters that people can just escape their busy work lives from and just have a bit of crack and play.
This is a bit different because you obviously have a background in theatre. Basically the only person in the room who knows what she's doing, right?
No, I think there were a couple here tonight now that felt like they had some background in theatres. Yeah.
Well, there did seem to be, like, you know, in amateur dramatics and that kind of thing, people who had some experience of that. How hard is it, you know, to put these things together in an expat community? You've limited resources, all that kind of thing. Because you were involved last year, and I seem to remember most people going, never again, never again, never again. And 6 months later, they go, let's do it.
I think every year everyone apparently comes out of it saying, I'm not doing that again. But the after party makes up for it massively. And time is a great healer. And, you know, you face the Swedish winter again, and you're like, what the feck am I going to do for 3 more months of winter? And then this pops up, and it's the perfect timing to get you out of your house one evening a week and with a bunch of people and just doing something creatively.
When you sit there as the director and you're sort of throwing out lines to people and asking them to read as characters and that kind of thing, what's going through your mind? Because before we pressed record here, we were talking about how hard this business can be. You can't do that when people are giving freely of their time and themselves. Would you be tempted to say, what the hell was that? Or do you have to try to find sort of softer words for those things?
No, because my opinion isn't necessarily right. So everything is subjective. So the way I see a character could be completely turned on its head by someone reading it, and I'm like, they brought a totally different thing to it that I never saw before, and they are dead right. So it's really just about trying on clothing and like trying on personalities and seeing if this one fits, or they read that, so that means they saw that in that person, which I completely missed, and they're bringing that to the table. So everyone connects with these people differently and can show you different sides of the characters that might work better than the one you had originally thought of. So as a director, you can obviously steer things when you feel like it's going wrong, but I also like to give actors the freedom to play with it and not always do it the same way. Because as an actor myself, I love to play and do it one way and then be like told, why don't you try it like she's angry, or why don't you try it like she's really thirsty? So it's fun to just try things on and see what fits.
Take me through the process now. Tonight was the first read-throughs, right? You know, we'll all have grey hair by the end of this, right? We're sitting in the middle of January. When's the performance taking place, and what do you have to do every week to get it over the line so that it's fit to be put on stage?
Yeah, so it's going to be put on in May. So we've got 3.5 months, and it's only meeting every Monday for 2 hours. So it's like when you look at a production that's on the West End or in one of the national theatres in Ireland, or any professional production, they probably have 3 months full-time work going into this.
40 hours a week.
Yeah, like sometimes some productions are less, some are more, but definitely full-time, 8 to 12 weeks minimum. So it's a huge commitment from the guy. Like if the actors come to me every week without their script learned, and we're coming up to April, that's like we're screwed. The better people are at having their script learned, the more work we can put in and the more we can do. So it's really it's a very much like we have to trust each other, and because no one's getting paid, they're all giving up their free time, everyone has lives to deal with, so you just have to hope and trust each other that we're all going to put in the time needed to make it an awesome show.
So it'll be one rehearsal a week now, and then coming towards the actual event itself might go up to 2 rehearsals, and then there's dress rehearsals and there's tech rehearsals, all this kind of thing. What do you expect the finished product to look like from what you've seen now, these the green shoots that you would have seen here this evening?
I think it's going to be really, really fun, and there was a lot of talent here this evening, so not that I'm so surprised, but it's the first time I think in a while that we have too many people for the parts in the show. So we can actually pick. We have a bit of a choice, and everyone seems really enthusiastic and eager. So I think it's going to be great fun, and people are going to feel like it's better to feel like they've been chosen rather than they've had to do this as a favor.
Yeah. The last one left with no line.
Exactly. They didn't have a part, so I filled that part. This time we're like, we picked you because you're right for this, and we really want you on our team. So I think that's going to give people an extra boost going into us.
Is there anything that Spuds and Sill need? Do you need money?
Money. They will say that they've come up with this themselves, and they've done amazing work. Like
the committee.
Yeah, they've worked really hard. It's really hard to set up an amateur group and get people to trust in you and come along and
buy your tickets
and get involved. So they've done an amazing job. But now I think they could take it up a notch. Like the more that they're doing this, the more people that we're seeing coming out of the woodworks that are like, oh, this is the only English-speaking theatre group I could find in Stockholm, and I miss the theatre so much, I just want to be involved. And these are Americans, Swedes, English, Irish. It's not just Irish people, it's people from everywhere. So if they had some money and they could take this up a notch, get a couple of paid things in there, like a costume sets, designers, a couple of things. It doesn't have to be crazy, but it would really take it up a notch to the next level.
Right, so any sponsors out there who are listening to this, get your hands in your pockets, lads. Right? And for you personally, because you're doing this on an amateur level as well, what else are you up to in your career at the moment?
I'm writing a play about my grandmother and her work as a peace activist in Ireland in the 1970s. She founded the Peace and Reconciliation Centre in Glencree, and they are turning 50 this year. So to celebrate that, we're putting on a play I have an amazing team, mentor Colin Murphy and a director, Connell Morrison, and producer Hugh Farrell, who are all on the team with me, and we're going to put on a reading in Glencree this summer.
That is a whole other podcast. But for now, Grace O'Malley, thanks very much. And we will keep up with your progress over the coming weeks.
I hope you'll be joining us live.
Look, have your people talk to bloody people. That's all I'll say in the matter. There you go. That was the magical Grace O'Malley there. And what Grace O'Malley wants in terms of theatre, Grace O'Malley gets. So we'll have to have my negotiations there, and we'll see how we turn up on it and that kind of thing. As I say, lots going on in the community. Those of you who are involved in the Stockholm Gales will have seen an absolutely brilliant newsletter put out there by Michelle Cotter, the new chairperson of the Stockholm Gales. And we're really, really lucky in the GAA in this country and in this region and outside of Ireland in general, right? Because we have some absolutely brilliant people who take part in these committees and who help us put the games together and the tournaments together and that kind of thing. And Michelle and her committee came in at the end of last year. And what's really interesting about this newsletter, lads, is how inclusive it is, right? And by that I mean, it's not just aimed at the members or the players or the sponsors. It's aimed at everybody, and it has a message there from the ambassador, and it has, like, you know, it's a real sort of broad and a very brave thing to do, it has to be said as well. And I don't know now where Michelle sent it to. I don't know what the list of addressees was like, but I think an awful lot of people in the community will have got it who weren't previously involved in the Stockholm Games. And if they didn't, I really hope they do get to see it, because it's tremendous altogether, and it very generously lifts this podcast as well, which I'm very grateful for, and I'm really hoping that there's a load of new listeners tuning in for the first time. So congratulations to Michelle and the gang on that. As soon as we have an idea of what's going to be happening in terms of fixtures and that, I know there's discussions going on in the Nordic Committee at the moment about when the tournaments are going to take place and that, you know. I want to see as much football and hurling and camogie as possible. That's the way it's always been with me. I would be out every Saturday playing Gaelic football or playing hurling or camogie if I had the chance. I know that's not feasible, but you know what? there's a few ideas knocking around the place now, and we do have, clubs that are within sort of driving distance. Malmo are only a couple of hours down the coast from Gothenburg, and of course they're only across the bridge then from Copenhagen and that. And we ourselves here, you have, I think Gävle fielded 2 teams. One was wearing a jersey with Sandviken on the back the last time we played up there, and ourselves in Stockholm. We did a great thing with the girls a few years ago, the girls of the Stockholm game, and in fact it was just after Michelle Cotter moved here to Stockholm that we got on the boat. So we had a great night on the boat over to Helsinki, and then we played football against them all day, the Helsinki Harps, our good friends over there, and then we did an even better night on the boat on the way back. So that's one of those things I'd love to see both the men's and the women's team doing again, and I really hope that the opportunity comes up for us to do those things, because it's all down to getting as many people playing as possible and playing as much as possible. And you know what, have that in mind now as you go to work and you go to college and you go to school, right? If your mum and dad are Irish and you're going to one of the English schools or wherever you're going to gymnasium, the further removed from our community these people are, the better, right? So we're going to bring people into our community to play Gaelic football and to play hurling and to play camogie, right? So even if you look at that person and there's Svenne Svensson there, has no idea what this crack is about at all, lads, right? Bring him along, bring her along, bring anybody along, and just get them to try it out. And then, when we get them down there, we'll just show them this warmth and this sense of competition and crack and all that kind of thing, and we'll show them the basic skills and we'll get them involved. And who knows, we'll have a few Nordic all-stars in there for life, would be the way certainly that I hope it goes, because we've had a few people join us over the years. There's a lad who used to play football, I think, for Geiss, the soccer club down in Gothenburg. Dag, I think his name was. And he played a couple of seasons, 2, 3, 4 seasons. And, people come and go and that kind of thing. But it's great to see Swedish people getting involved who don't really have any connection to our community other than maybe a friend who plays Gaelic games. So let's keep that in mind as we go forward. Right, if you want to talk about history and about culture and that kind of thing, one of the things that always springs to mind when we talk to people in Irish bars, when we talk about music and Irish music in particular, is the Dubliners. So when it arose that the Seven Drunken Nights show was coming to Stockholm and to Malmo and Helsingborg and to Gothenburg, not in that order, lads, you'll have to look up the order now and we'll include it in the show notes. I thought I have to get in touch with these lads. And as I said, the old Christmas break put a spanner in the works, so we couldn't really get hold of Ged and the team there. But we eventually got them anyway, just as they were arriving in Helsinki, to the theatre where they're going to be putting on the show now, tonight as I'm speaking to you. And then after a few shows in Finland, they're going to be moving down to Denmark, and then it's our turn, right? So first up is Malmö, and then it's Helsingborg, which is only a stone's throw away, and then it's up to Gothenburg, and then it's up to us here in Stockholm. So as I say, I'll include the link to the show notes. And if you're part of the Irish in Sweden WhatsApp community, right, I started the Irish in Sweden WhatsApp community, and we've I think it's 4 different groups there. So we've one for sport, there's one for business, there's one for events, and there's one for, I think it's music and culture, music and literature or something is the name of it, right? So you can join the general Irish in Sweden community, and I dump the link to this podcast in there every week. But not that you need reminded, lads, because I know it's 7 o'clock in the morning, you have the alarm set every Monday morning to listen. I get that, that's grand, right? So I put that in there, but then you can join the group. So if, like Carrie Cook, you're not that interested in sport, don't bother joining that group and you won't get those messages. But if you're interested in events and if you're interested in music and that kind of thing, absolutely join those groups and you'll find out about it. And on occasion it's a good idea, because sometimes people will tell me about gigs or that kind of thing where there's early bird tickets, or you might get a bit of a heads up before Hosier's coming to town so that you're ready and on the button when the tickets do come out, right? So it is definitely worth joining that WhatsApp WhatsApp community, not the WhatsApp community. Jeez, the last thing we want is another committee on WhatsApp. But so do join in that now. As I said, talk to Ged about that. Drop the link into the Irish in Sweden music and music and culture group and that kind of thing. So you'll find that in there. No, Carl Lambert struggled a little bit in the ordering his tickets. I hope that sorted itself out now. But so we got on the phone to him, and it's just, I think actually when the phone call started, right, Ged was in the back of a van, because like this is not like your standard sort of band where myself and Brian O'Connor and a few others were touring up, this is a big production, as you'll hear from Ged. And so he's in the back of the van, and they were winding their way to the theatre in Helsinki when he decided he was going to check in with the Irish in Sweden podcast and tell us what the Seven Drunken Nights show is all about. And sure, here he is. Ged Graham, you've just landed in Helsinki. You're just going to the venue for what I hope is the first of some very successful shows here in Scandinavia with Seven Drunken Nights. Could you just tell us how the show came about and how it came to Scandinavia?
Yeah, well, it came about following the Dubliners decided to retire the name in 2012. When they decided that, I've been a Dubliners fan all my life, brought up in Dublin, moved to Manchester when I was a young lad, and when the opportunity came up to think about putting a show together about the Dubliners, I was really excited by the prospect. So I spent a couple of years working on it, and we debuted in 2017 in the UK and Ireland, and we've been touring now for the last 7 years, and here we are in Scandinavia. We've done tours in Norway for the last 3 years, and we've been looking for expanding into the rest of the Scandinavian countries. So yeah, here we are in the first show in Finland, then we move on to Denmark and then on to Sweden for the last leg of the tour later on in the next couple of weeks.
It's fantastic altogether. What format does the show take? Is it the story of the Dubliners? Is it a different story that you're trying to tell? Or is it basically just the music of the Dubliners, Ged?
No, it's the story of the Dubliners. So what we do is we try to put all of the songs into context. So we start off with a recreation of the Late Late Show special in 2012 when they done the last appearance as the Dubliners, and then we go back in time to O'Donoghue's in 1962, and then we work through a staged concert of all of the songs and all of the landmark moments in the career, like being on Top of the Pops in 1967, working with Phil Coulter, all of those kind of landmark periods of their development and the fantastic 50-year career. So yeah, and we tell the story from that 50 years from 1962 to 2012.
And what's your role in the whole lot? Because you're a man with a grand big beard. If your WhatsApp pictures aren't to go by, you look like Ronnie Drew might have got a few beard and tips off you as well.
I think he could have done. I couldn't do it. Get a few tips off. Could have done get some tips off Ronnie on how to keep the beard sane. It's a bit insane at the moment. But I'm the narrator and the writer. I wrote the show and I narrate the show. So I'm the link between the audience and the story. So I walk through all the scenes and tell the audience what's going on and hopefully keep it, light-hearted in the light-hearted moments, somber in the more somber moments. But yeah, it's my role as the narrator just to take the story along its path.
Can you put the Dubliners into context for me, Ged? Because I'm really conscious of the fact that you're an Irish person who grew up in Manchester as well, so it's going to be of interest to people. Yeah. Where do you see them in the sort of cultural canon? I was only just talking to somebody about Andy Irvine and Planksty and all this other great music that's coming out of Ireland, but the Dubliners really were a class apart, weren't they?
Oh, unbelievable. I mean, their importance to Irish music can never be understated. I mean, if we go back to 1967, Seven Drunken Nights, banned by RTA and then picked up by Radio Caroline. And in 1967, 5 hairy blokes from Dublin singing in Irish Dublin accents were on Top of the Pops. Now, 1967 was Flower Power, Psychedelia, the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper, Jimi Hendrix, and yet you had these authentic folk singers singing in their own accents on Top of the Pops and on the airwaves throughout England and around the rest of the world. Now, if you were an Irish person living in England at the time, to hear your own people speaking in their own language was unheard of. So culturally, it was a huge, huge thing, and it opened the doors for every other Irish artist that came after them. From Thin Lizzy through to U2. So the significance is hugely important. When we came to England in 1970, one of the few possessions that we carried over on the boat from Ireland to England was my dad with his long players, his albums under his arm, his precious sort of music. And one of those albums was A Drop of the Hard Stuff by the Dubliners. So that came with us, and that was played every week at his Sunday sessions in the house. And we were brought up on that music, and it became very, very significant to us growing up to have that link, that musical link back to Ireland. And the Dubliners, certainly for Dublin people, was that link. And a great sense of pride, great sense of pride in hearing your music being played and accepted by people across the world. So hugely important to me.
They were unusual as well, Ged, in that they had 2 iconic singers. First was Luke Kelly, and then Ronnie Drew sort of stepped out of his shadow a little bit and took over once Luke left. Do you have, and I hate to put you on the spot here, Paul, but do you have a preference for an era that's your favourite? Is there one that shades it for you?
Oh no, not really, because the two such, just it's like trying to choose between John Lennon or Paul McCartney. You can't,
Yeah, or picking
The
your
two,
favorite child of your own kind of thing. It's like that's just
yeah,
not fair.
it's just not fair. I mean, for me, Luke Kelly is perhaps the greatest soul singer ever to be, ever to grace this earth. I mean, he stands, as far as a soul singer is concerned, somebody who sings deeply from the inside of the body, as a Marvin Gaye or a Sam Cooke. His place of singing from the soul is so important. I don't think anybody else in Irish music has ever matched where he's at. They just haven't. It's his unique part in the story of Irish music will always be in his voice and how he approached the music. Now Ronnie Drew, he was singing urban ballads in a voice that that you couldn't have had things like Dicey Riley or Seven Drunken Nights without the voice of Ronnie Drew. It was such an important tone and style. These are sort of real songs sung by someone who could really put them across and really own them. I couldn't imagine anybody singing Ronnie songs other than Ronnie.
When you look at the politics of the Dubliners, because Luke Kelly is often referred to as a great singer, a great ballad singer, a great folk singer, but he was also very left-wing, very involved very in favour of the union movement and that kind of thing. Was that an important thing from your perspective when you were in Manchester and in sort of, north-western England at that point?
Oh, very much so. I mean, the trade union movement is very, very important to anybody who's from a working class background anyhow, because, it just is. That you have to have people who are standing up for your rights as a worker. The majority of people who came over from Ireland in the 50s and 60s were in the most basic of jobs where unions weren't always there to help and secure safe working environments, especially in the building trade. I mean, the way Irish people were treated in the building trade, God, there was no health and safety.
Yeah,
it was it was straight onto the building site and down a hole. There's no shoring up. There's so many people killed on building sites, and the trade unionists who fought for better working conditions, are celebrated. And I think he's a great exponent of the urban ballad and of workers' songs. So
a great collector.
Luke's a very, very important person.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think politically as well. They were never big in America, the Dubliners. And a lot of that was to do with, pictures of Luke selling the Daily Star and, the trade union newspapers when he was living in London. That didn't help with them going over to America. But, he stuck to his politics and, good on him for being the man who done that,
Indeed.
A great person for that. And, a wonderful... I mean, I'm a huge Luke Kelly fan, but Luke Kelly is, if you were to have a model to base yourself on, Luke Kelly, true to his music, true to his country, true to his musical styles. That he never chose a song that was light, a light-hearted throwaway song. He'd done lots of funny songs and comedic songs and pop songs, but every song that both him and Ronnie sang were well chosen.
Yeah.
They were chosen by them to be sung. I think they made some great choices along the way.
Yeah, I think there was about 10 songs since we started talking that have popped into my mind, from Paddy on the Road to Hand Me Down My Bible to all of those things have all had something to say. Is this a difficult show to put on, Ged? Because I know there's a lot of work goes into the tour like you're doing at the moment. Is there a lot of people involved? Is there a big cast, a big crew, a big stage show to put on?
There is. I mean, we just arrived up at the theatre now, and we're going to set the stage, and we've got a huge set. We recreate the interior of O'Donoghue's pub.
Oh, God.
And then we have a recording studio on set, and we have the concert part of the set. So we have quite a large crew, and then we've got our 6 in the cast, and then we've got all our backroom people as well, our marketing people and everything else that's involved. So yeah, I'd say all in all, to get the production from the page onto the stage, it's about 18 people are involved in the show.
Yeah.
So it's it's a big show, and we're blessed to be able to play all over the world as it happens. But we play some great venues, some really great venues. We're in a beautiful venue today in Finland. I can't pronounce where we are because I'm terrible on
No,
stuff like
nobody
that.
can. Nobody can.
But,
Not even the Finns can pronounce
no,
it. Don't let them fool you, you know.
But I mean, look, we're in the Dominion in the West End of London on St. Patrick's Day. Now, who would have thought an Irish, an Irish group on St. Patrick's Day at one of the premier theatres in the West End of London?
Superb.
Come on, that's that. And when I walk on stage and get the chance to sing the songs, I just think of my dad.
Yeah.
He's passed away now. I think of my dad with his Drop of the Hard Stuff album under his arm as we're getting on the Princess Maud, coming out of Dunleary, coming into Holyhead in 1970. I think, wow, Dad,
There you go.
There you go.
We've come a long way. These shows that are taking place in Sweden here, Ged, where can people see you and why should they go and see you, do you think? If you had to make the elevator pitch for seeing Seven Drunken Nights here in Sweden, why should people go?
Well, just to have a great night out. I mean, there's nothing better. Across the world, 80 plus million people who claim Irish heritage celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Well, we're bringing St. Patrick's Day to you in Sweden in January. You're going to come along. You're going to get an authentic experience of Irish music, and you're going to go away and forget about your troubles, forget about everything that's going on in the world, all the bad stuff, and you'll have 2 hours of escapism, listening to some of the best music that's ever been created, and created by the Dubliners, and we're great at being able to have the opportunity to present it. And come along and see us. You'll have some great crack, and we'll have a few tears as well, but we'll just have a great night out.
That's it. I'm sold, as are the listeners to this podcast. The people from the Irish in Sweden podcast will be there in their droves to see Seven Drunken Nights when it comes to Sweden, and you'll find all the dates and the ticket information in the show notes. Ged, I would like to honestly wish you the best of luck there in Finland, and we'll see you when you get to these shores in the very near future, my friend.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. What a beautiful place Scandinavia is. I wasn't expecting to be this much snow, though.
You want to check your Wikipedia. It happens this time of the year. Take care, Sean. We'll see you soon.
Thank you now. Bye.
And as I went home on a Friday night, as drunk could be, I saw a head inside the bed where my old head should be. Well, I called my wife and I said to her, will you kindly tell to me who owns that head with you in the bed where my old head should be? I drunk, you silly old fool, still you cannot see. That's a baby boy that my mother sent to me. Well, there's many a day I've gone 100 miles or more, but a baby boy with his whiskers on I never saw before. And as I went home on a Sunday night, as drunk could be, I saw me wife inside the bed, and this she said to me.
There you go, a drop of the hard stuff. You'll hear the voice of Gay Byrne there on the Late Late Show with the Dubliners playing Seven Drunken Nights. My God, when was that? I think that was actually back in the 1980s or so. But that's a taste of what you will get if you go to see the show Seven Drunken Nights, and pay attention, as I say, to the Irish in Sweden WhatsApp community and everywhere else, and I'll pop out the links to the tickets there so you can get yours. Great old crack, lads. I mean, it'd be brilliant old crack altogether to go and see that in the dark of the Swedish winter. That might keep us going there now, and after that, sure, it's only a month to St. Patrick's Day and off we go. Listen, we're almost at the last interview of this week, and that is with my good friend Brian O'Connor. I've known Brian for many years. Brian was one of the first people that I met when I came over here. And I lived out in Masht at that time, which is out by Arlanda Airport. I've said many times, that's why when I say, like, on this podcast, that if people can support it at patreon.com/Errorman in Stockholm, that's great, right? But if you can't afford to support it, the content will always be free, because I remember what it was like to be in this country and not to have a whole lot of money in the very beginning. You know, Brian was one of those people that I met, and I'd played a lot of music in Ireland. I played with an awful lot of bands, and I played drums, I played bass, I played guitar, and a whole lot. And as you'll hear in the conversation that we have here, we're sort of reminiscing about some of the people we knew and the places places we played and how it went, you know. And Brian very kindly took me under his wing. Back then there was an agent named John Higgins from County Cork, ran a company called Blackwater Music, and John had a fantastic hand in sort of just booking out Irish artists and musicians all over Sweden and Germany and Denmark. God, Jesus, he had me playing in Estonia and everywhere, you know. So myself and Brian and Lockie and various different Ian Maloney, everybody would have been out around the place playing on that circuit, you know. It was a great way to get started. But Brian sort of coached me, and he was telling me, okay, try this song, try doing that song, try doing this song this way, you know. If you're playing a slow ballad, you might want to jazz it up just a little bit to keep the crowd with you, and that it was very, very helpful to me in the very beginning, and I'm delighted to say that I've known him ever since. So he was in touch with me there recently. He's been on the podcast before with his band Armadillo King, and when they released their second album last year, their third album is in the pipeline now, but he's actually he's got a completely different album on the go now, and that's why we said that we would sit down and talk. So last night went down to the Liffey, one of the fine pubs in Gamla Stan here in Stockholm. Not as fine as Martin Hession's Veerström's now. I mean, there's a little bit in it now, because Martin's is still the best Irish pub in the world, lads, not just in Scandinavia. And Martin has very generously sponsored this podcast and supported it from the very, very beginning. Never once asked me to do anything. Never said, oh, would you mind mentioning this? You know, I'd almost think that the chap's embarrassed when I bring it up, but he's been very generous to me as well. But as it happened, Brian was playing in the Liffey, so that was where we ended up meeting, and we said we would go down there and we'd have a little bit of a chat about music and that kind of thing. And to be honest, we were having a bite to eat beforehand, and Brian got there before me, so he was eating his food and I was waiting on mine. And Jesus, it almost felt like a podcast series in itself. All the people we've met and the songs we've sang and the things we'd like to talk about. Well, we sort of cut it down here, and we said, okay, you know, for a half an hour or so, we'll have a little bit of a chat, and that's what I'm going to bring to you now. In the beginning, you'll hear Brian talk about Dave Keary, the man that he made his album with, right? And it staggers me altogether, because Brian is such a brilliant musician, right? I look up to him. He's part of the reason I retired, because I'll just never be as good as what this fella is, right? And then to hear him talking about Dave, who, you know, he maybe rightly, maybe not, he sees an even better musician, is absolutely amazing. So you can just imagine the level or the standard or whatever that they're getting up to on this album. And indeed, we'll actually play out with a track from it. So this is the last that you're going to hear from me solo this week. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I hope it's been a bit of a change up for those of you who aren't too mad on sport or business or that kind of thing, to get the bit of the old arts and culture stuck in there. And as I say, if you're doing any of these kind of things yourself, if you're playing any gigs, you know, there's a few musicians now that I have on my hit list of people that I want to talk to in the near future. So yeah, but do get in touch with anything that you have that you want to talk about, or that you think that the community should know about. Sure, anyway, here he is, the legendary Brian O'Connor, on his new album together with the great Dave Keary, a fantastic guitar player, and the story of how all that came together, and quite a few other stories besides, it has to be said. From the bowels of the Liffey here in Gamla Stan, sitting here with one of the original gangsters of the Irish music scene in Sweden, Brian O'Connor. Brian, a new album on the way, but before we get into that, how are you keeping now in this cold and dark January?
I'm good. I'd be a liar to say it doesn't affect me, but yeah, it's fine. It's keeping busy. It's how would you say, keeping on the road and keeping, you know, the devil from the door.
Never off the road. 1995 you moved over here, right? One of the things, I moved over here 4 years after you. I still never got used to this darkness, that kind of thing. Does it still affect you the same way?
That's the thing. January and February, I really try to keep as busy as possible. I find the month drags. Well, I think it helps. We live in a smaller town. We moved to Nyköping in 2007, so I think it helps that, you know, it's kind of a smaller environment. You know, town is just there, kind of a quick walk away, and I try to keep busy with the music as much as I can. There's always a bit of a lull after Christmas, you know, as the party is over, but, you know, start of a new project, January, February, you know, new possibilities, etc. And at the end of February, as the song goes, got to get through January, got to get through February. So it's yeah, we do what we do, you know, rehearse, record.
And just to entertain yourself now, you have a new album coming out at the end of January, early February here. Tell us a little bit about that, because this is somebody that you played with for a very, very long time.
Yeah, myself and a man called Dave Keary, who might be recognisable to some people as the guitar player with Van Morrison, among many other people. We've been playing together for quite a while. He would do his own things, you know, with Van and with the Lord of the Dance. He was with Michael Flatley for 4 years, Jerry Lee Lewis. Anyway, so we played together once or twice a year. We've played together since the mid-'80s, really, in different bands and lineups. So
let me pause you there, right? Because this is kind of like one of those things. It's very much a who you know business in the music industry. Did Dave ever come to you and say, "Look, Brian, I'm playing with Jerry Lee Lewis, I'm playing with Van Morrison. Does a fella needs a bass or that kind of thing?"
No. God, no.
How bad are you?
I'm telling you, no. I could keep you here all night. No, no, it was never like that. No, it's he's that quality of a player. But we happened to be playing in a band a long time ago with a man called Joe Brown, legendary, unfortunately passed away last year, Limerick country musician. So I was a late caller, and I would say a late member who joined the band, was say around 1989 or thereabouts. Previous to that, I'd played with different people, around Limerick scene, was say wedding bands, you name it. So I was definitely, and it still am to this day, definitely way under the standard of Dave's playing. But anyway, it was a big band, a 7-piece band. Joe was, I could say, an incredible teacher. We were immersed in the real country, the real thing. It was, it wasn't watered down. He was a teacher, definitely. Joe.
So it wasn't this sort of Gareth Brooks kind of thing.
No, and he as much as I respect all that, but he definitely avoided that. We were kind of immersed in Jerry Jeff Walker, John Prine, Hank Williams, some of the old songwriters, and Joe was a stickler for timing, which Dave would acknowledge this. I still speed up as I play, but Joe was a strict disciplinarian for timing, and he just ran a very tight ship. Fantastic grounding to have. And Dave was playing with a band called Tuesday Blue at the time.
I remember them.
Yeah, great band, absolutely powerhouse of a band. So they had their own thing going, and 5-piece band. So then I was playing with different bands. Dave went to live in Dublin. We'd see each other every now and again. I went to Sweden, then he was with Lord of the Dance. We met up in Sweden. Then we decided to do a 2-piece thing in or around the Limerick area when we'd be home and convenient for him, etc., etc. So, and that sort of, I would play some of the songs that we loved, the songs that we liked. And I still tend to lean towards country or blues or roots music. So does Dave in many ways, and it became a thing over the years. So I'd say about 2 years ago, we kind of discussed doing something. But of course, with COVID and with scheduling and with everyone kind of getting active after COVID, it didn't really happen. This year we spoke actively about doing something, and it came together between October and November of this year, and early December it came together between Knee Shopping in Sweden and Limerick in Ireland, Dave's own studio, with the great help of Owen O'Neill, the great Owen O'Neill on bass. Excuse me.
Owen played with Moving Hearts, didn't he?
Moving Hearts, Chris Rea,
Donald Lunny and all that back
Stagger Lee, Des Lacey on drums, Davy McGeehan on fiddle, Dawn Brown, the great Dawn Brown, Joe's daughter, and James Hanley, fantastic James Hanley on keys. And we were basically, Dave was sending me guide tracks. I would record a vocal, the bass and drums would go down, and then maybe a final vocal would go down. So it was back and forth due to the wonders of technology.
How did you find that process? Because when we grew up in the 1980s and were playing music in Ireland, it was 4 tracks, and they were like, Jesus, you don't have to play everything live, you can overdub, and then there was 8 tracks and that. But now you can just send an MP3 or a WAV file across.
Yeah, it was gradual. I find it okay, actually. It's nothing beats live, playing
being
in
the same room,
There's nothing beats live, but I mean, due to the actual skill and the expertise of Dave, and I can't say enough about him. He just is an inspiration. We pulled it off, I think. Then we had the great Peter O'Malley, who I came across. Peter O'Malley would be his stage name. He's the reason I'm in Sweden. I came across on tour with him in 1995, and he's an incredible artist. So he designed the cover, and really, we're incredibly indebted to Peter. And Dave then produced the whole thing and gathered it all together with the great help of Henning Enjefjell from my side in recording me. We'll say additional recording was done by Henning Enjefjell, but all the production, mixing, all Dave Keary.
Is that Henning that plays with you in Armadillo King, no?
The very same Henning, yeah.
There you go. This is all starting to make sense to me at long last, you know. How satisfying is that process? Because I've been speaking to a couple of musicians who engaged in that kind of process during COVID and that, and sort of, you know, transatlantic MP3s and that kind of thing. Like I say, it's a different thing to being in the same room, and yet it gives you space and it gives you time. It's not like Dave is sitting across the table from you going, right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, you actually have time to...
Yeah, the funny thing, we were a little bit restricted for time this time out because of Dave's commitments. And my commitment was on the road, but you know, I'd certain amount of gigs booked where I had to be in a certain place or a certain country at a certain time, and Dave would be the same. And then, you know, your life gets in the way, as they say, you know, and then actually making sure the other musicians, you know, were available. So we were a little bit restricted that way, but we were in agreement. You know, Dave basically kicked my butt to get the track listing together. One of the tracks that we included is a track called Upstream. Now, the album is called Downstream, just to make people think, I suppose. But Upstream was written by myself and Dave about 12 years ago for a movie called Dirty Oil, which was an environmental documentary, I suppose you call it, about the network of pollution from the big oil, we'll say, with the tar sands in Canada down to North America, etc., etc. So that became the end credit song in Dirty Oil. And that song lay kind of fallow for a while. We didn't really use it. We were given the rights to that song rather than commissioned. So we decided to use that song as there was always a full version, a three verse version of that song, which we had never used. We'd use the edited version for the end credit song. So we decided we'll do this. And Dave, through Dave's contacts with Damien McGeehan, fantastic violin player who was on tour in the States at the time. So he recorded his parts while on the road. And the whole thing, I think really the catalyst with Dave's, we say he has played so many times with Owen and with Des and with James Hanley, obviously. The magic came together in Red Door Studios in Limerick. Henning gave me such a great hand with the recording the vocals here, you know, recording in a proper environment and with proper microphones, etc., etc. And that's the way it came about. And I think there was a warmth involved that would not normally be involved in a production like that. I feel anyway. That's my opinion. Yeah.
The songs that you're writing now, did you write them with Dave? Are these Brian O'Connor compositions? How did you pick the songs that you were going to put on this album? You mentioned, of course, that, you know, Upstream was written with Dave 12 years ago. Was it, okay, I'll see what I have in my bag here kind of thing?
It wasn't really. You know, we decided to record actually covers, but they were songs that people would have loved through the years, through our shows, we're saying Dolans of Limerick. And I must have mentioned the great Mick Dolan and Valerie Dolan and Neil Dolan for putting on these shows over the years. So the original track, Upstream, was written. We were given a kind of a theme of a certain amount of images, of names, and we were told to write a song around that. So I came up with a three verse song. We were missing a big middle 8 in the middle, which was put in by Dave, and so that's how. And that's I think that's how songs come together in general. My version would have been very simplistic, and Dave put the real, you know, ornate stuff on it, and really, you know, the whole middle 8 where the song kind of gushes up, if you know what I mean. That was all Dave Keary.
Sort of climaxes around that
exactly.
point. Yeah.
That's the thing, and the orchestration was all his, arrangements all of his. So so that's how that came about. So yeah, that song was premiered in the Barbican in London 12 years ago. Kind of a funny night there, but the movie was shown. It was shown in the White House. Barack Obama happened to see it at the time. So yeah, it was kind of a documentary with a message, we call it. You know, a message to younger people, I suppose. You know, anyone was at the launch that night. The less said about that, the better. But it was a great night. You know? But
I wonder, will Barack Obama be getting a copy of the CD or the vinyl now when this comes out?
Hopefully, anyway. But
if he'd hold it up on his Instagram, we'd be delighted.
We'd be very honoured. I can tell you, the likes of him. But yeah, it was the whole thing. I think the warmth of recording in two different places, two different countries. was achieved, I think, on the album.
Is there anything else in terms of, if you look at the album now as a whole, the album's called Downstream, right? Is there a theme, like, it's not a fucking concept album or that kind of thing, but is there anything that you look back on the songs now and say, okay, this is what this is about?
Well, it's a funny thing, because we discussed, Dave and myself discussed that, because originally the album was recorded about the pollution downstream of the Athabasca Lake, Lake Athabasca in Alberta in Canada. But since we both come from Limerick, which is the estuary of the River Shannon, obviously, a sort of a flowing water theme came through the whole thing. I mean, we have a song called Acadian Driftwood, which is written by Robbie Robertson, about the Acadian-British Wars, a masterpiece really from a mid-70s band album. And there's a lot of water themology in it. I don't know why, but this just came, to the fore, we'll say, there are a couple of other songs that mention water as well in it. I suppose when you're born and bred and live beside water all your life, the west coast of Ireland or east coast, whatever, being yourself, it does come into it.
Yeah, we're an island people, like, so it's almost surprising.
That's it. Yeah, it's an island thing. Yeah, and so I think everyone at one point we were talking on the phone and we're saying, like, it need not necessarily be an environmental album, but everyone is downstream of something in life, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So they can take their own meaning from that. The album been called Downstream. Also, my brother, there was a documentary made about my brother, Dr. John O'Connor, in Canada, and that was called Downstream. So I just have, I just continue that sort of flow of things.
There's no point trying to fight it now, is it? The puns are coming.
The puns are coming, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, the whole thing. It was a suggestion that we call it Downstream rather than the upstream. Of the way the song was, the title of the song itself. It would be easy to call it Upstream, make that the title track, but we decided to fool people.
Exactly. There's no point in doing what people expect,
No, take a left turn all the time, yeah.
We're fully expecting Dave to listen to this, right? So how would you describe him as a guitar player, right? Because certain guitar players, Mark Knopfler, the lad out of the shadows, Hank Marlin, they have a very distinctive sound. Is Dave the kind of guy who can play any sort of guitar? What do you think of when you think of him as a guitar player?
Dave is a world-class musician. He thinks, lives and breathes music and brings his own personality, which is amazing, and his own approach to the instrument. His instrument happens to be the guitar, but he plays a few other instruments too. He started out as a drummer, as a matter of fact. He is one of the most, if not the most distinctive guitar players out there.
Is he? Yeah.
He is, yeah. You know it's him immediately. If you hear him playing, you know it's him. I would certainly recognise his playing absolutely world class. And it's an honour to play with him, I could say that.
Is he easy to play with? Because sometimes those really good musicians are a pain in the arse, because it's like playing football with Henrik Larsson. They're so far above us mere mortals.
He's the most empathetic player you'll ever come across.
Is he? Yeah.
He's absolutely, he sort of grabs on a lyric, musically grabs onto a lyric and takes it to a different space all the time. And you end up at the end of a song with a different picture in your head than at the start, if you know what I mean, if that makes any sense. So yeah, he's a painter of pictures really with the instrument, acoustic or electric.
Many years ago, back in the day, I'm sure, when you were in Dubliners and Limerick and various places, like, everybody was looking to be the next U2 when we were playing music, What are you trying to achieve now, Brian, when we're sort of, the north side of 50 at this stage, Is it still pop stardom on top of the pops and all that kind of thing? Maybe TikTok, bit of viral on TikTok?
To be honest with TikTok, no, it's literally a compulsion, we have to do it, I wouldn't say a need, it's a drive to do it. I just felt, I suppose, creative really, and the drive to actually do it is there. I've no stardom aspirations whatsoever, but it's just nice. It's so nice to get these songs down, and it's such a pleasure to play with these musicians. And Dave and myself are just on the same mental level in terms of getting this stuff out. These songs deserve to be heard. A lot of them would be fairly obscure covers for the men of the street, but to us they're the songs we've been playing all along. And I think at the at the Dolan's gigs, which were so ingratiated to Mick and Val and to Neil and to all the Dolan's crew and to all the audiences have showed up over the years, and these are the songs they like. For example, we'll say that another water theme song would be Paradise by John Prine, so we included that. Again, water is permeates the whole thing, you know. So, no, aspirations are to our souls, really. That's the best thing. And to our audience, fantastic audience out there. Yeah.
Speaking of your audience, your regular audience here now, you're back on the road again now after Christmas and that kind of thing. How many nights a week do you play, and how do you still manage it, right? We were saying there just before we hit record that we're sleeping in slightly better hotel beds now than maybe what we were doing 30 years ago. Do you still enjoy it every night? You're going to be going on the stage here now in maybe 45, 50 minutes. Do you still look forward to it? Do you still get a bit of crack out of it every night you play?
I do. It's what you make of it. And, you know, it's really an honour to get up and be able to do it at this point. You know, I'm 58. I'm my 59th year, I'll be 59 in June. And, you know, it's a big bad word out there. You know, a lot of people can't do it. So I'm just grateful for the ability to be able to go up and do it. A friend of mine had said to me that Paul Brady had said that, you know, every performance, you don't know who's listening, and it could be your last performance. So make it, you know, mean it, make it and mean it. And musicians over the years that have impressed me are musicians and singers that actually mean it. So I do actually still mean it, and I hope that comes across.
How do you keep meaning in that though? Because I was Dave Brown, our mutual friend who lives in Las Vegas and plays 6 nights a week over there, 3 sets a night, and has been doing he's been doing this as long as you've been doing it kind of thing. And he put out this thing himself and Roy Buckley from Cork, you know, they were joking on Facebook. They did a Facebook Live about the stupid things that people ask you for, like song titles that they get mixed up and that kind of thing. How do you still have the patience with that? And what was the worst one you've ever experienced?
Oh Jesus.
You remember that one about the person coming up and asking me to play I Heard It on the Radio? I was going, can you sing it? Yeah, I heard it on the radio, there's whiskey in the jar, but would you ever fuck off?
I think the funniest one for me was the Mountains of Moron.
I think that's where I'm from.
And yeah, that would have been in the old dub. And but people are people. I mean, we live in Sweden here. I mean, tomorrow I go to Norway. So yeah, people work hard all week, you know, and you never underestimate your audience. Last night we had people just here in the same venue, people who travel quite a distance, and it really made me humble to see that they'd come quite a distance to see the gig. So you give them what you can. Yeah. You give of yourself, you know, and make sure that they, you know, they're happy, you know. Yeah. Of course you get a Saturday night. Of course you get, you know, where you kind of go, this is a bit whatever. But the following day is a new day. You get up again and you just say, okay. You learn every day. If you could hear some other player, some young guy coming in or some young girl coming in, and you'd learn something from that. You always learn something, or something, a throw off, something somebody might say, a throw off line. You pick up on it straight away. And I'm very lucky to have a very strong family. My wife is in knee shopping, is behind me all the way. So, and the absolute wonderful support of Dave Keary, you know, my partner in crime in this. I couldn't have better. I mean, the guy is incredible, you know. So,
is there any plans now? Because I know you did the shows in Dolan's in Limerick, and there was shows I think booked here in Sweden, and then all of a sudden, because of Dave's other commitments and your other commitments, they didn't happen. Are they going to be rescheduled for some point? Actually, I think we hyped them up on the podcast, and then literally minutes after it came out, we cancelled them.
I know, yeah. It was unfortunately that was the way. Yeah, there are plans afoot. So we're going to get the album out here in Sweden, and it will be on streaming platforms before long. But we wanted to get it out in physical. I know a lot of people don't have CD players anymore, and the vinyl thing at the moment wasn't an option because we were working on a certain budget. But it will be on streaming platforms before long, and there is a mini tour mooted of Sweden, so it will be slightly different to what I'm doing right now. And yeah, there's a couple of more Dolan shows coming up, and maybe a couple of more Irish shows as well coming up in the near future. So,
what can people expect from those shows? Is it the full band or is it just the two of you?
It'll probably be the two of us in Sweden. And we don't. Yeah, it's a good question actually. There may be a point in the future where there will be a band, maybe something as featured on the album. I'm not too sure about that. But for now, it is the two of us, and it is sort of condensed into that. And it's it's an intense show. You know, it's a very personal show. You know, we make people as if it really is personalised to them. That's our attempt anyway, you know. And we give it our damnedest. And I'll tell you that it's I think it's something to see anyway. Hopefully it will be. Yeah.
I was actually kind of disappointed when the shows were cancelled because I was so looking forward to seeing it, you know. But one of the things that stuck out about you, and I said it on this podcast before, is that quiet nights sometimes at a venue, I'll see you play and you'll pull out one of those John Prine songs or Robbie Robertson songs. And as I say, I know a good bit about you. I worked for Golden Disc for years, so I know it, but sometimes you'll surprise me. Do you ever get, would you ever be nervous doing that? Because you can carry a tune, right? But you'll be sitting there with an audience that maybe doesn't know it. How does that go down when people are out for a few pints on a Thursday night kind of thing? Can you get away with that, so to speak?
I think with something like that, I kind of tend to live within the song, if you know what I mean. And that would be, I try to put a message across as such, lyrically or musically across. And I'll appeal to the sensitivity. Sorry, my phone went off. Appeal to the sensitivity of the audience themselves. So
you wouldn't do it like on a Friday night at 10:30 when everybody's up at the tables. You wouldn't go, oh, here's one I wrote when I was 17.
No, not particularly. You can do it. That can be done in Sweden. I have done that. I still do it occasionally here in the Liffey and in Malmo as well. And Trondheim. Yeah, I'll pull a few out in Trondheim as well. So it can be done. If you have them on your side, it's a wonderful thing,
It's a powerful thing. We mentioned there, as I said, half this conversation had to be off the record because we libelled both the living and the dead before we pressed record here. Your circuit, if you like, is an awful lot smaller now than what it used to be. Is that fair to say?
Well, it's not smaller in distance. The distance is still the same, but I've kind of condensed it down to gigs that I'm comfortable with, and I really enjoy playing. I would say the Norwegian Trondheim gig, I really enjoyed. Malmo, I really enjoyed. The Great Down in Fagans. And here, the Liffey is an at-home gig. Whereas before it would be 3 weeks tours of Finland and 3 weeks in Germany and, God knows where else, Holland or whatever. And you wouldn't see home for... I'd often leave on a Tuesday, play Linköping Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. I'd be gone to Copenhagen then till the following week and then on the way back to Germany. And that would be normal, that'd be life. And you might have 3 days off then, you're off the road and you're kind of shaking to get back on the road.
I remember John Higgins had me playing in towns in Germany I'd never even heard of. I was like, what? How do you spell that?
Well, I could beat that. I actually showed up in a town in Finland one time and walked into the gig and told them I was playing there that night. Played the gig, got a hotel, then went on to the following gig and I was told that, where was I last night? I said I was in the particular town, Iisalmi, actually in Finland. I said, you were never booked there. So I walked in and told them I was playing.
So you were that famous there, you could just decide where you play.
I just walked in and told them I was playing. They set up a stage, got a PA system, put me up in a hotel, fed me, paid me. Oh, they went. I said they're still wondering. They never had a gig there before or since.
The only gig I ever wrote, Jesus, was a cracker.
I was wondering what I thought I saw it written on the sheet, but I didn't. Obviously, it was kind of.
Yeah, no, I did that. I turned up in Uppsala 24 hours late for a gig at one point. I think in 1999, so I won't be doing that again.
No, I've done that with Gnesta and Knivsta. I actually mistook the two.
Same amount of letters in the name.
I want to say it very quickly, but.
But this was, or rock and roll music, whatever you want to call it, was previously a young man's game. 59 years of age now, Brian. How long can this go on, do you think?
As I say, I might be a bit of a Max Bygraves, some sing along a Max.
Your Vegas residency awaits.
Yeah, as long as the old bones keep on going, the creaking at the moment, but it's fine. I mean, this album and these gigs with Dave are such an inspiration. They keep me going. They really, really keep me going. And it just try to improve as best I can. And with Armadillo King as well, which is again a really big project over here with a third album coming out now very soon. So I mean, with Armadillo King we got in the top 10 albums in Sweden last year. So I mean, released last year. So that was a good accolade for Henning and for Patrick and for Mats now, the drummer. So we're playing in Todd's place actually. We're playing in Jakob's bar in Jakobsberg on the 1st of February. Yeah. With Armadillo King, so that should be good at 7:30. So, and things like that. And Todd is going to gig myself and Dave out there as well. So that'll be good fun. It's ideal, really. It's an ideal place. So,
when you look on the cutting room floor of Red Door Studios in Limerick, is there still songs there? Is there still stuff that you want to do with Dave? Or are you just concentrating on the now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there are new songs coming up. Yeah. It's snippets. There have been snippets. I have an app on the phone where I must look like a lunatic going home at night. I'm just singing into an app, into recording my voice. The next day I mightn't remember, or a chord structure or something, and that might change. Or even on the road, sometimes I remember doing it in Copenhagen one time, having the great song, idea for a great song, woke up the next day and realised I'd written a Crowded House song that I'd probably heard the previous day, and said, oh no, I can't use that, Yeah.
I remember writing Rebel Rebel by David Bowie 25 years after the fact.
I wrote that several times, yeah. But yeah, the snippets are there, and there is a second album bubbling under at the moment, yeah, definitely, and that will be all original, yeah.
There's a sound check to be done here, there's a gig to be done here, but I want to ask you one last question, Brian. If somebody is listening to this and they've just moved over, they have a lovely Martin guitar somewhere, they want to get going in music, what's the one piece of advice that you wish you were given when you came here in 1994, 95 to start playing? What do you wish that you knew then that you found out in the meantime?
Yeah, learn how to book trains properly. learn how to book planes properly. Yeah, just give it your all. Not to be too overly forceful with people, but to reserve your integrity. Keep the integrity going. Don't sell out. And it's.
If you don't mind me asking, what do you mean by that? Do you mean be yourself rather than try to be somebody else? Or
I think in Sweden, and you probably noticed because you've played as well here in Sweden, that if you try to do things, in earnest and to the best of your ability, the Swedish people tend to sit up and notice. It doesn't seem to happen in different countries, but certainly in Sweden, they love the idea of one guy with an acoustic guitar. That's why you don't see so many backgrounds here, or a band, or a good blues band, and that's why there are so many really, really good blues and country bands here on this very street. You'd have.
Martin Hessian up at Veerströms has them several nights a week. Yeah.
Exactly, Martin is fantastic, and it's the real thing. It's real Chicago blues downstairs. These guys have the equipment, they buy the equipment, but reserve the integrity. And to anyone starting out, write music. This very minute to write music is where it's at. There's a guy just passing us here, Arthur Cottam, who works here, is a great songwriter. But be self-editing, but don't be too critical. And get as much down as you can, record as much as you can, as fast as you can. So, record labels are basically gone at the moment. But, there is room for, songs and soundtracks. There is room for music. Music still exists, and there is a possibility to make money from music. So, if you want to make a living at least. But, it's not about making money. After all these years doing it, it's not about making money. It's literally, okay, it's nice to be able to make money from music. But it's a drive. It's a compulsion. It's like do you paint a picture because you want to make money from it? No, you actually paint a picture because it comes from within you. It's a self-expression thing. But to anyone starting out, write. Keep writing.
I could say the same to you, Brian, because I can't wait to hear this new album with Dave. Keep writing, and actually, if we might even include a track on this, if we have an MP3 that we can.
I'll send you the note.
Right, I'll tell you what. Then introduce the track. What song are you going to send me that we're going to play it with?
I'm going to send you play a track called Acadian Driftwood by Robbie Robertson, which was taken from an album originally called Northern Lights Southern Cross, and this was a track that Dave suggested to me a long time ago, and he just sent me the most killer guide track. And this concerns the Acadian British Wars in Canada, Acadie, Nova Scotia. I can't put my finger on the year now, maybe 18th century. So yeah, it's a bit of a long one, a bit of an epic, but it's and the great Owen O'Neill, Damien McGee, James Hanley, Dave, my God, Des Lacey, indebted to them all.
Here we are, and that is it for this week's Irish in Sweden podcast. I'll be back again with you next week. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of one another. Brian and the boys, take it away. Acadian Driftwood.
War was over and the spirit was broken. The hills were smoking as the men withdrew. We stood on the cliffs and watched the ships slowly sinking through their rendezvous. They signed a treaty and our oars were taken. Loved ones forsaken, they didn't give a damn. Trying to raise a family, end up an enemy over what went down on the plains of Abraham. Acadian driftwood, gypsy tailwind, they call my home the land of snow. Canadian cold front, moving in. What a way to ride, what a way to go. Then some return to the motherland. The high command had them cast away. Some stayed on to finish what they started. They never parted, they just built that way. We had kin living south of the border. They're a little older and they've been around. Wrote in a letter, life's a whole lot better. So pull up your stage, children, and come on down. Acadian driftwood, gypsy tailwind, call my home the land of snow. Canadian cold front, move it in. What a way to ride, what a way to go. 50 under zero when the day became a threat. My clothes were wet and I was drenched to the bone. Then I asked fishing, too much repetition. Make a man wanna leave the only home is known. Sailed out of the Gulf, headed for St. Pierre. Nothing to declare, all we had was gone. Broke down along the coast, what hurt the most? When the people there said you better keep moving on. Acadian driftwood, gypsy tailwind, they call my home the land of snow. Canadian cold front, moving in. What a way to ride, what a way to go. Everlasting summer, filled with ill content. This government had us walking in dreams. This isn't my turn, this isn't my season. Can't think of one good reason to remain. We worked in the sugar fields up from New Orleans. It was evergreen up until the flood. You could call it an omen, point you where you're going. Set my compass north, I got winter in my blood.